Well, boys, looks like you started the fun without me.
You're all sick. Every last one of you.
We're going to need a bigger gun.
What's the matter? You scared of things that go boom, boom?
Give me one goddamn reason why I shouldn't blow your goddamn brains all over that goddamn wall.
My name is Eric. I'm here with Michael on Double Feature. And we have two films today about, I don't know, human beings.
Yeah.
That's the most I got for you. I'm going to go with human beings.
Okay. We can go with human beings. We can go with England.
We could go a little English here. I think we're going to learn about people today.
Okay.
I want to say it's both sides of the spectrum. I want to say we're just...
And by spectrum, you mean whether they're happy or sad. That's the spectrum that you're speaking on. Human beings have a lot of spectrums.
Fear and love are the... Sorry. I'm thinking Melinda and Melinda. Right?
Sure.
I'm thinking comedy and tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
You could consider one of these a comedy and the other a tragedy.
Right.
I suppose that works.
Yeah.
What are the two movies on the show?
We're going to do Closer and Happy Go Lucky.
So we'll start out with the downer.
Yeah.
And then we'll talk about Happy Go Lucky, which is quite obviously from the title, the brighter, the happier
not
of the
downer.
two, right, of the two films. Now, my plan here today is to actually spoil the contents of both of these films right on our show.
That's impressive. I'm really excited for that.
So if you saw Closer once in 2004 and forgot what happened, you should probably skip over that to Happy Go Lucky, which is a film that I'm assuming next to no one has seen.
Yeah, I had never heard of it.
But also awesome.
Yeah,
so
very good.
If you haven't seen either of these films, there's going to be some spoilers. There's going to be some character stuff. You should just skip over, come back to it later, download the show, stick it on your computer. When you watch the movie 4 years from now, you'll have a nice little surprise sitting in your downloads folder.
Wow.
You can use the chapters that are a part of the show, a feature of our show.
A feature of Double Feature.
It's probably the best feature of our show.
I would say the best feature of our show is probably Behind the Mask.
That would be the best film featured on the show.
Sorry, I get
also possibly not true.
It's almost like it's very likely not true.
Listening.
David Stevie not listening.
Not true. Not true at all. Anyways, what was I saying? Chapters. Use the chapters to skip over, or the time codes, or you've got the hang of this thing by now. This is somebody's first episode of Double Feature.
If you don't know what to do with chapters, listen to next week's episode or the previous week's episode, because I'm sure we really nailed it one of those two times.
Ask a friend. Now we're going to start with Closer, and I don't have a lot written
That's great.
on the iPad about Closer.
Okay.
I just assumed you would run with this as far as humanly possible.
I will, and I'm going to need you to stop me when we get to Happy Go Lucky Train.
Sure. The only thing I need to say about Closer is when I saw it, it had a really great trailer that had, is it Suzanne Vega? I think it's Susan Vega, right? The song Caramel.
Yeah.
Which is great. It's a wonderful, loungy, it's an amazing song, and I've had it since then, and I still listen to it. Almost daily for some reason. It's an incredible song. That ends what I've prepared for the show today.
Well, then I guess I'm gonna have to take the reins here.
Step up.
Okay, so Closer is. I saw it in the theater when it came out in 2004, and at the time it totally blew my mind. I had never seen anything like it. To be honest, I've still not seen much like it.
Sure.
Probably because I don't usually watch films that are like Closer.
Well, you and I were wondering quite a bit about this.
Right.
If it is really the only thing of its kind.
Yeah.
Or if perhaps every Julia Roberts movie is like this,
right.
And we just have no idea.
Exactly. But the thing that you brought up while we were watching it, and that I'm really glad you brought up, because I'm glad that it was at least semi-obvious, is you mentioned the shape of things.
Ah, right.
Something we did back in, I believe, year one.
Yeah.
Rachel Weisz, Paul Rudd.
Sure. It was right around Tank Girl somewhere.
Right. And the big thing that we talked about with that film was that it was based on a play, and a lot of the actors were in the original production.
Sure.
And so it translated a little bit weird to screen. So the thing about Closer is it too is based on a play, and the two male actors, Jude Law and Clive Owen, who play Dan and Larry respectively, were both in, I believe, the original stage production of Closer. The difference here is I can't see how you would make Closer an effective play.
Sure.
Within the film, they do a lot of time jumping and switching scenes, and it's always just conversations between people.
Right.
And the thing about switching scenes as quickly as they do in the film, I can't see it being easy to do that in a stage production sense without disconnecting people for any period of time
Sure.
between these conversations.
Yeah, this is one of those things that sometimes when you watch a movie a million times, you get a better sense of a lot of things about the movie. You learn more about it, you pick up on more.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of those oddities, having seen Closer a bunch. I don't remember if it was ever difficult for me to pick up on the time, or if that was always. And now it's fairly obvious that they're skipping. Basically every scene is a pretty big jump.
Well, the whole film takes place over about 4 years, and within the film, there's maybe a handful, let's say maximum 10, 12 different conversation scenes.
Sure.
Which have to take place over 4 years. So there are some serious time jumps that go on with these 4 people's lives. And I remember, too, watching it for the second, third, fourth time, always being surprised by the time jumps, because in my head, it takes place over such a long period of time, and 3 or 4 scenes in, we're already at somebody breaking up.
Sure.
And that always used to surprise me, because I was always trying to play catch up with the film, because I felt like it was leaving me behind.
Right, absolutely.
The thing that I really, really love about this film, and I do absolutely adore Closer, it's no secret. It's one of my favorite films of all time.
Mm-hmm.
I love the time jumping. I love the fact that every scene is just 2 people in conversation.
It is, yeah. There's basically, unless the characters are moving around to go talk to the other characters, there's rarely, if ever, a scene that has I'll say there's never a meaty section of dialogue before between more than 2 people.
Yeah, exactly.
You have the scene toward the beginning where the 3 of them are all in the room, but Natalie Portman's character even, tells him, you have to leave.
Yeah, and before that, she goes to the bathroom.
Right, they'll kick characters out of scenes.
Exactly.
They don't want more than 2 people on stage at all times.
Right, so basically what goes on in Closer is you get these 4 people who all have sex with each other, and then one of them wins.
Right.
Essentially, it's almost
That's an interesting point of view you have there.
It's a character study where it takes 4 different types of people. You have a romantic, which would be Dan, Jude Law's character.
Right.
You have a liar, which would be Natalie Portman. The stripper, the Alice or Jane character.
Right.
You have the honest bastard douchebag.
Sure, which character is that?
Played by Clive Owen.
Oh, excellent.
And then you have this, I can't pigeonhole Julia Roberts' character other than slut. I don't mean it in a negative way.
Right. Okay.
It's just that she definitely, they say it in the film, in the scene where Larry and Dan are talking in the doctor's office, which is one of the funnier ones.
Right.
Larry points out that Anna, Julia Roberts, loves a guilty fuck, and that's what I really feel like fuels Anna's character is this underlying drive to be a bad girl, but like in a really dirty way, not in a I'm a stripper way.
Yeah.
And so that's essentially what you get is a character study of these 4 types of people mixing bodily fluids with each other.
Betraying their monogamous situation.
Exactly. And that's the other thing about the film is a lot of it is betrayal, but you have to accept that they're all in monogamous relationships.
Right.
Because a lot of the time, specifically in the scene at the Opera House, where Dan and Anna are talking, Anna has just fucked Larry in order to get him to sign the divorce papers, which is the only scene where they really do a flashback instead of a flash forward or jump forward, I guess. In that scene, Dan says, you had sex with him, I can't believe it. And she said, I didn't give him anything. It didn't mean anything.
Right.
And Dan's all upset because they had sex, but to Anna, it really wasn't a serious thing.
Sure.
So if you're of the mindset that polygamy is an option, which in 2004, I was in high school, that was not an option.
Right. Right. Okay. I wish someone would have told me in high school that was an option.
Exactly.
Right? That wasn't until right about after high school, I think, that I started having open relationships.
Yeah.
And the one vital mistake in my entire sexual history is not being aware that in high school, I will be surrounded by 4,000 people who, half of which are women in their, I don't want to say sexual prime, but...
sexual willingness stage?
Well, I don't even know if that's true.
Yeah,
I think maybe as you grow into adulthood, let's say, let me make this sound like a really mature conversation.
Please do.
As you get 5 or 10 years older, you loosen up on these personal sexual restrictions that you might have for yourself. So being in high school, you are surrounded by thousands of people who will probably have sex with you under the right scenario.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's an amazing situation that for anybody who's listening to the show and in high school, that will never happen again.
Yeah, you need to take advantage of that. You need to take full advantage.
As frequently and with as many willing consensual partners as possible.
Absolutely.
Safely. Anyways, you were trying to make a point.
Well, the point that I'm making is that you have to accept the monogamy in this film.
Sure.
And the reason that I like that the one scene where monogamy gets called into question slightly, the opera house scene,
right?
It's Dan's character and Anna's character.
Mm-hmm.
Anna's having sex because she likes the way it feels to be dirty.
Yeah.
So she says that it means nothing, which is a lie. And Dan is a romantic, so having sex at all with anybody that's not him is completely not allowed.
Oh,
if it were either of the other two characters involved, you could believe that there was some innocence there, but fortunately,
sure,
it's written in such a way that the two characters who cannot really deal with polygamy are forced into talking about it.
Right. Yeah, I don't mean to make it sound... It's comical for me to think of Closer as a film where a bunch of people have problems that could be avoided if they were all okay with having sex.
But I mean,
with each other.
that's how most films are.
Yeah.
Basically, this is that is your suspension of disbelief for Closer.
Yeah.
If there were any parameter of suspension of disbelief, you have to suspend your disbelief in that monogamy is the only accepted principle.
Well, but there's nothing wrong with monogamy if you're not putting magic into it.
Yeah.
If it's little more than a sexual kink, if it's an agreement that two human beings have decided to participate in, ultimately the ability to make agreements, something important that puts us above, I don't know, animals, right?
Yep.
Totally a fine decision for two people to make.
Mm-hmm.
Dan himself obviously could probably never engage in open relationships. Although when you look at the amount of pain these people have suffered through, you start to think, Dan would try in an open relationship. Maybe could it get any worse for him? You know what I mean?
Well, see, that's the thing is, so at the end of the film, there are a few other scenes that I want to talk about specifically, but I think it's important to kind of wrap up what ends up happening here. And it's that at the end of the film, the underhanded, mean bastard of a man who I will contend is the only really honest guy. He does cheat, but he immediately comes clean. He's not a nice guy. He's got a
direct guy.
Yeah, exactly. He gets to the point. He is forward, and he's the one that ends up winning. At the end, they have the sadness montage over The Blower's Daughter, the Damien Rice song, which to me is the Closer song, and I adore it. Especially in that opening scene, which I want to touch on.
To me, it's the song that's not Caramel, so it makes me a little sad inside.
I'm sorry about that. But at the end, we have Larry wins.
I love how simple that is for you.
Yeah, well, they show the montage, and the only person who's sleeping soundly, who's not bummed,
the Larry wins montage,
who didn't get their heart broken, who's not in a shitty situation, is Larry. Larry played the cards. He fucked everybody. Larry fucks everyone.
Sure.
And he ends up winning. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, when did Larry and Dan have sex?
Well, they spend a lot of time asking the girls about each other. So I never even questioned that. But sure, when did they have sex?
Well, I fully agree with your previous point of the fact that they both know so much about each other sexually.
Lot. They seem just as obsessed with each other as with the women.
There's that really, really, really good scene, right, between Larry and Anna. Right before they break up.
Sure.
After he gets back from his business trip.
Right.
And they preface this scene a little bit when Dan and Anna are talking at the photo shoot. And they're talking about the book, which ends up being called The Aquarium.
Yeah.
And he asks her if she thought it was too dirty or risque. And she says, no, it's accurate. That's how sex is. That's how people talk about sex.
Right.
If you're going to have a book where people talk about sex, it's going to seem dirty and a little bit offensive and perverted. And we've already seen that Larry's kind of a pervert.
Yeah.
In the fucking what was it? A chat room?
The internet wank scene.
Yeah. There's a chat room. And
can I derail you for a moment here?
Derail me.
This is bizarre.
Yeah.
This, as I'm watching this movie, 2004. It doesn't seem like it was that long ago.
Yeah.
Now we can see these movies from the 90s now, and we know the 90s aesthetic. You know, we've seen a lot of that stuff on the show. And the decades previous to that have very clear aesthetics too. And in the last 10 years, some movies are a little older than others, but most seem fairly modern.
Mm-hmm.
They don't date themselves too much. This 2004 film appears to be out of some missing year of time that I was not aware of.
It's very true.
First of all, these 4 actors,
right,
very much
powerhouses in 2004 and
right.
Never Before and Never Again.
Yeah, one film a year afterwards.
Except Jude Law, as you mentioned.
Except Jude Law. Very strange. The other thing is the way they talk about the net. Let's call it. Do you remember the Sandra Bullock film, The Net, by the way?
I saw it once.
If you have anything to say to me about The Net, doublefeatureshow@gmail.com. I'm not even sure where I was going with that. Just such a weird thing. We called it the internet. Back when 7, maybe 8 people were on the internet,
right.
I think one of them thought, all right, I have the power right now. Before it becomes popular, I'm going to get people to call this thing the net. And then that'll be my thing. I got people to call it that. And it never caught on. But it's weird seeing their chat interface and the way they speak. The fucking quote from the movie is perfect. It's an extraordinary thing, the internet. The possibility of genuine global communication. The first great democratic medium. 2 guys wanking in cyberspace.
Yeah, that's really...
It's still now sums up.
It's completely
sums
true.
up the internet beautifully.
It's completely true. And that scene where they're having the sex chat with the score and all the...
Sure.
I love that scene.
Can that count as my favorite scene?
Yeah. Is that your favorite scene? I was going to ask you what your favorite scene was.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean... I know they're not in the same room, so it's a little bit...
But it's still a conversation. They corresponded.
It certainly is. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And just to see him smoking, right?
Sure.
The non-smoker. To see him smoking and then typing away in the tiny little office that Clive Owen's character is in. Everything about that.
And he's just a doctor and he gets a call.
Sure.
But in the meantime, he's talking about a girl being in a queue of strange... Like, it's just this wonderfully depraved moment where these 2 characters are... Well, one of them is really opening up and the other one is really just being a jerk.
I love that by the end of the movie, he's got this big, luxurious office.
Yeah,
And, in the beginning of the movie, he looks like... Remember the guy in the back of the stock warehouse in Look?
Yeah.
Who would have sex with people and then have to answer the phone? That's pretty much stolen from Closer.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's not, but it's the it's the exact same location. Those guys could identify very well with each other.
And then you see the same character, the Larry, the doctor, in the white coat, the Sultan of Twat. You see his kind of... He calls it perversion, but it's not perversion. It's a sexual kink that he has where he's just really into detailed sexual stuff. It's just a graphic...
Sure.
He has a graphic mind when it comes to sex. And you see that change because it's the same thing when he's demanding that Anna tell him all about having sex with Dan.
For sure.
It's the same thing in his brain that demands that he knows, where they had sex and if she came and how his cum tastes.
Right.
It's the same.
Her response to that, by the way, is the best thing ever.
Well, that whole exchange, I think, that just those 2 lines, what it is cum tastes like.
Like yours, only sweeter.
Yeah.
I think.
And then he says, thank you. Now fuck off and die.
Right. Right. As if he needs to know. He's gotten everything he needs out of this now. He's glad she was honest.
Yeah.
This is the end of the conversation. Yeah.
Before we get into the kind of headier double feature territory, there's one more part, like context of the film that I want to talk about. And I know there's something that you want to talk about within the context of the film too. But the first opening scene of this movie, again, we have the blower's daughter, Damien Rice, Jude Law, Natalie Portman walking toward each other in slow motion.
Right.
Everything at this moment, everything is so innocent. Nothing has gone wrong for any of these 4 people. And it's all in slow motion. It's basically, it seems like you're watching 2 people fall in love in the stereotypical slow motion walk towards each other, embrace, score swell, love forever.
You're savoring the simple moment of the film.
You're basically watching a train wreck in slow motion.
Sure.
You're watching these 2 people and what seems like should be a wonderful moment colliding.
Yeah.
Crashing into each other. Destroying each other's lives. Right. And collateral damage.
Sure.
Right? You're thinking the whole time, the first time you watch this movie, you're thinking, oh, this is a beautiful moment. The second time, you're like, let her get hit by that car.
Sure.
Let her stay there, just walk away. Write her obituary. You're so close. You never have to be connected to this person. You can still be saved.
Right.
And you just watch the very first moments of these people's lives, these 4 people's lives just start getting ravaged.
Sure.
Just because these 2 people happen to make eye contact on the street. And you have this romantic song, and it's just, it goes back to the scene where Alice is talking to Larry at Anna's exhibition. And Alice is talking about how the photos are a lie because it seems beautiful, but the people are unhappy, but it's reassuring. And the film does a lot of meta stuff. I already talked about when they discuss the book and later get into the sexual thing. But I feel like it's really light, and it's kind of a double commentary on actual art. But
and the fact that they're in a gallery,
right?
And
Exactly.
Clive Owen's character makes fun of, talking about the discussing the work at the opening of the work,
and it's basically the same thing where it looks like this beautiful moment is happening, but it's really just it's the beginning of a very sad time.
Sure,
I love as soon as it starts, I am glued to watching the rest of the film.
Well, and it comes back around a little bit at the end too. You know, just hearing you describe that, I mean, I'm thinking of all these people who turn and look at her at the end.
Yeah.
And
who she doesn't pay any attention to.
Any other day, that could have been their lives that were fucked up for 4 years.
Yeah.
It just happened to, the events didn't quite coincide, in the same way.
Yeah, and you just have all these guys that are staring at or I guess it's Jane then.
Yeah.
We're staring at Jane, wishing that they could do terrible, horrible, wonderful things to her.
The other time you have everyone staring at her, she's also Jane.
Yeah.
It's really, true. I think it's just the name.
Yeah.
As soon as she's Jane, everyone is interested.
Plain Jane Jones.
Yeah, I really, really like that set. That whole strip club, I mean, that stands out for me. One, it's one of the more surreal places.
Yeah. Well, and the
film.
Colors are so vibrant, whereas everything else is kind of dreary, gray London.
Yeah, everything else feels like it's closer to documentary, and this feels like it's closer to stage. You know, it's a really classy kind of pink and purple strip joint, and a place where, oddly, the Prodigy's Smack My Bitch Up is always playing, regardless of what year it is.
A Wonderful World, where Smack My Bitch Up is still playing.
Is on a constant loop. A song that I thought was perhaps not tactful enough for a place where everybody is in a suit.
Yeah.
And has this, wonderful, expensive-looking lighting. I'm just not going to expensive enough places.
Yeah, that's probably what it is.
If you know a really, really high-end strip place like this one, especially if it's in Chicago, even if it's not in Chicago, doublefeatureshow@gmail.com. Maybe we'll podcast from it.
Fucking A. So we've already kind of toyed around with the fact that Natalie Portman has 2 names.
Sure. Alice
and Jane. Her real name is Jane, but she has this name Alice Ayres for the entirety of the time that she's fucking around with Dan. And that comes from this weird, it's not a graveyard, I guess it's a memorial garden or something.
Sure.
Where there's a bunch of plaques with the names of people who died saving other people's lives.
Right.
So I know we rarely, if ever, talk symbolism on the show, but I think that this is a really, really good moment because it'll roll me into another thing that I really want to talk about.
Sure.
So I really like the fact that she is Alice the entirety of the time that she's in love with Dan. And when she leaves him, she goes back to being Jane.
Mm-hmm.
Because she gets the name Alice from this people who saved people thing.
Yeah.
Which basically she's saying, as long as I'm Alice, you're not going to get hurt.
Sure.
And the second she stops being Alice, she's either fucking Larry
right.
or leaving Dan.
Oh, interesting. I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
See, because when I saw, Save 3 Children, I thought that was a dig at the 3 other characters.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, you did not save those people at all. Right. But you're right. It's only when she's with.
Yeah.
It's only when she's Alice and she's with Dan and everything is completely fine.
Right.
And then she's Jane. She's using a real name and she is destroying everyone.
Exactly. And so that kind of brings me to this weird question that I think Closer just digs and digs and digs at, which is, where is it ethical to sleep with other people if you really feel an emotional connection? Now, I understand that probably it makes sense to have a significant other,
Right.
realize you want to fuck somebody else, tell significant other, then fuck other person.
Sure.
That seems like the logical progression. But if you really have an emotional connection, an honest, true emotional connection that I feel like these characters really do, I
Right.
feel like that is a serious component
They're
to the
not
film.
quite just banging each
Right,
other.
exactly. Yeah. Can you really blame the other person? I'm honestly not entirely sure of the answer. I would be in a very confused state if I were on either end of the spectrum.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's it seems like something you're compelled to do.
Right.
They make the argument towards the end of the film that there's
Sure.
always a moment.
Yeah,
where
and
you
I agree
can
with that.
resist.
I fully agree with that.
You know, and so if you've entered into these agreements with people, I suppose it's definitely the wrong thing to do.
Yeah.
To betray that trust, even if you're going to come clean with them. I don't think I've ever been in a position where I've ever cheated on anyone.
Yeah, well, neither have I.
Although I have helped other people cheat on their boyfriends.
Uh-huh.
So and in my head until right now, I've never felt bad about that because it seemed like their life, I don't know anything about it. They know what they're doing. I'm not going to pretend I know how, their relationship is laid out, just as I don't expect them to pretend to know how mine is.
Right.
However, when you start getting involved with somebody who you're not just sleeping with, you're in love with, and you would betray the person you're currently with to be with them, I'll tell you where the line definitely is.
Okay.
When you're seeing them in secret for a year,
Yeah.
you've definitely, at that point, you have definitely crossed the line.
Sure. I fully agree.
I mean, I think it's, God, man, I have no fucking clue.
Yeah.
I think this is what happens.
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
I think maybe not for a year. Seriously, a year?
Yeah,
I don't even remember what we were doing on the show a year ago. Can you imagine if we'd been doing the show in secret for a year?
We did that once.
How do you fucking keep a relationship secret for, I don't know. I guess people do it though, right?
Yeah.
People have mistresses. People see prostitutes on the side. Now I'm just thinking about political scandals. I don't know. It comes easier for some people than others. I think it's one of those things where you put it in a place in your mind where you say, well, this isn't okay because of whatever weird excuse I've made up.
Yeah.
And then you just don't think about it. And a year later, something brings it up and you think, oh, crap, we should probably, this is not good.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that is, I think, one of the more difficult things about Closer to really understand.
Sure.
Is whether or not these people are wrong or not wrong, but bad. You know what I mean? Whether
Ultimately,
or
if
not they're bad people.
Sure. Yeah, I don't see, that's the thing. They're wrong, but I don't think they're bad people.
Yeah.
And maybe I just have a lot of sympathy for the place they're in, or empathy, I suppose.
Sure.
They're living normal people lives, and they happen to have come across each other, and they can't fight it. They're given it. It's almost like the characters' constant fights or non-fights with smoking the entire time.
Yeah.
I just feel bad for these people, even the one that wins.
It's our duty to either do one of two things. One is send everybody listening right now to Bagcat. The other is cover a happier film.
Yeah, you know what? I know everybody's getting out their Bagcat prematurely. Happy-go-lucky, this is something I fought to get on the show.
Well,
here.
yeah. Well,
so
I think
no irony here.
I think it really boils down to something you had heard of,
right,
to get on the show.
My selection, no irony. I had heard of it first, and now everybody knows.
Yeah.
So the film's from Mike Leigh, and I'm not a Mike Leigh expert, but I feel like from the movies I've seen of his, he's done some stuff that's maybe some mixture between dry and brooding. You know what I mean? Some kind of working class stuff, and they're very human stories. They're very much about people. I'm going to throw this term out once, and I think I've maybe only uttered it one other time on the show.
Samurai Stroller?
No, it's a pretentious loaded term. So here it comes.
Oh boy.
I'm just getting everybody ready for this. The human experience.
Wow.
I don't like the term. A lot of people use the term pretty loosely. If you watch a lot of human experience shows, then it's probably no big deal.
Is that like
to you.
Fear Factor?
No, it's not like Fear Factor at all. It could be, depending on which human experience. The idea of these movies is simply that you spend some time with some characters, and that is the plot of the film. When you look at Happy Go Lucky, there is no straightforward narrative. There's no roadmap. Something we've called for before, really needing in a film.
True.
And it's still, even though I love Happy Go Lucky, it's still hard for me to watch a 2-hour film with no roadmap, not really sure
where
there's
no conflict to resolution story.
Yeah. You're just spending time with the characters to learn something.
Yeah.
And for me, you always have to be in a study mood in order to see these films, because I think that's what they're about. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah, I think the strongest thing for me seeing this film for the first time, the thing that kept me really engaged was the driving instructor.
Sure.
Scott.
Sure. Well, that's the conflict. That's the source of conflict.
Yeah, and it's, I don't even know if it's
constant conflict.
I just yeah, it is. It's because that they're butting heads the whole time. It's a lot of electric dissonance there.
So to get back to Mike Lee for a second, but boy, don't worry, we will get to that driving instructor, because you're already starting to find exactly what I'm looking for in this movie. If suicidal was a genre, I feel like that might be what Mike Lee does.
Okay.
If you're learning Mike Lee's stuff, this might be a terrible place to start. I think this is fairly well separated, although not unexpected in comparison to a lot of his other stuff. This is a sort of study of Poppy, who is played by Sally Hawkins. And all we need to say right now about Sally Hawkins, all I need to get off my chest here, is that I'm exhausted just watching her after 2 hours. I don't know how she does this.
Yeah.
I'm just amazed. I can't even make myself smile for 20 minutes, let alone on set every day, being able to just... She really has to be this character.
Yeah, well, I mean, there are scenes where she's having conversations. The one that jumps to mind is when her and her coworker are at the bar, diner, restaurant after the first flamenco lesson. And Poppy is sitting there contributing almost nothing to the conversation other than repeating what her friend says and then saying some happy cliche.
Yeah, she's found herself in a situation where she doesn't want to focus on the negative part of that. And so she's looking for the bright side in every single, awful detail of what's happened.
Right.
There's a couple places where that happens. That's one of the things about Lee's method is that a lot of times he'll do movies without even really having a script set up. He'll focus on characters first and kind of work with the actors and give them a sense of who the characters are, what they're going to be doing. So a couple of the characters from this movie, if not all of them, had basically no idea what this was a movie about. They just intensely learned who their character was, what their character was about, what their character would do in these different situations.
And then they just kind of played.
Well, once you have those characters set up, you're ready for your character study, right?
Exactly.
What do you need to know about plot points? Today you're going to be in a car.
Yeah.
You sit in the car, you react to what this guy says. And it makes for incredibly natural dialogue, given how unnatural premise this is.
Well, yeah, and I don't want to get too much into it because, well, actually, there are two reasons that we can get into it.
Sure.
But Ricky Gervais jumps to mind when watching Poppy.
Just thinking that.
The thing is when Ricky Gervais does, we did Invention of Lying, perfect example. A lot of his asides and stuff he says in breaths, in lines, makes him seem like such a natural guy.
Sure.
Almost like he's not acting, like he's reacting to the strangeness that is surrounding him.
Sure.
And I was hesitant to bring Ricky Gervais up, but we do get a little conversation about traveling abroad and eating weird things.
Right.
Which we can liken to A1 Carl Pilkington's An Idiot Abroad.
It's great because when you were talking about Ricky Gervais's ability to say things between breaths, I was thinking of how great Stephen Merchant is at that.
Yeah, it's true.
Specifically Portal stuff. But, in a lot of the stuff he's done with Ricky, the three of those guys, all fantastic.
Absolutely fucking love them.
And there's just not enough ways to get their stuff on our show. Need to make more movies. Yeah, The Invention of Lying is a movie where you take a premise and then you sort of play with that premise.
Yeah,
and see
exactly.
what would happen. And Happy Go Lucky isn't nearly as fantasy of a premise.
Yeah.
But you simply take the idea that this girl is extremely positive, finds, the good in basically everything. And how would your life look if you were essentially never unhappy? Or you, at the very least...
saw the silver lining every time.
Every single fucking time, right. And so we start in a pretty safe place. We start with... with scenes of the girls laughing incomprehensibly. I mean, I barely have any idea what they're talking about.
The thing about
having
a lot
giggle party.
Yeah, the thing about a lot of English movies and TV shows that I've noticed, I've watched this show that came out on BBC, Misfits, It's a great show.
No idea.
Highly recommend this show. It's called
Awesome.
Misfits. But the thing about watching a lot of British shows that are made in Britain, for Britain, by the Brits, you need a good 10 minutes of acclimation to understand anything that anyone is saying.
Sure. Well, I have an especially hard time with that anyways. Yeah, while we're backing all of British cinema in a corner, anyways, there's also a little bit of dry humor there where, her jokes, a lot of times they'll fall flat, but that does not bother her at all.
Yeah.
To the people in the room, no one detects that she just made a joke, but you see visibly that it amuses her.
Yeah.
And that's enough for her.
Yeah.
And she loves that, and that's fine, and she can go on. The music kind of gets the joke.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if the music gets the joke, or it seems just like her brain is composing the music. It's almost like we're watching the movie through her
head.
brain.
Yeah, it has this kind of oboe, clarinet.
Yeah, there's a weird oboe clarinet duo, but it's perfect for the movie.
Yeah.
Especially when it's kind of dancing through the homeless guy scene.
Yeah, only really once toward the end did I notice it really break into more string kind of stuff where she has that moment thinking to herself. Beyond that, there's a surreal kind of sense of whimsy about fucking everything.
Yeah.
And that adds sort of the comedic element. If you've seen something like Curb Your Enthusiasm,
which I haven't.
Well, they use that same sort of device with the music there, where it gives you this kind of classic, isn't this a funny situation we found ourselves in vibe, which is interesting in that show to pull you out of a lot of the darker situations the characters are actually involved in. Poppy even finds herself happy on the bus, which for me, I know for a lot of people, we're going to get to the driving scene, talking about the homeless man, the kid getting beat up at school. There's a lot of sort of dark places the movie eventually goes to explore.
Or tries
what that
to go.
Right. That stuff bounces off pretty much just as well. But for me, being on a bus is pretty much, I like to think of myself as a generally positive person. I like to be really optimistic. I love people. I like being alive. I don't consider myself cynical. However, when I get on the bus, it is about the most miserable place on the planet. I've tried to stop taking buses, as I think I've mentioned several times on the show. This has been my year-long project to get off of the bus.
Yeah.
And depending on what time you take the CTA in Chicago, sometimes it's business people going to work. It's mostly people who look like they have a negative amount of money in their pocket.
Yeah.
They are less than homeless.
Right.
And they also have some kind of disease that makes them both sick and extremely unhappy. It's just a collection of crazies or drunkards. And it's an amazingly dark fucking place to be. Just traveling on the bus from place to place. Maintains her happiness even there. So it's weird getting used to a person like this. Especially if nobody has somebody quite like Poppy in their lives. A lot of people probably can relate to having some character like this somewhere. But I think at first she comes off as airheaded a bit.
Sure.
And that almost is sad to me upon, a couple repeat viewings. You start to think, you get a sense of who this character is. You go back to the beginning, and the mere fact that because she's happy all the time, you think she's a fucking dolt.
Yeah.
That makes me feel really awful. She has this ability to have serious conversations with people. She's talking about, she has a sense of understanding. She's defending these parents who don't have time to take out their kids. Her mind is in the conversation. She's not someplace else, just, trying to stay in a happy bubble and ignoring what's around her.
Yeah.
She just comes off in a way that most people who tune out the world also happen to come out, because that's maybe how they don't get drugged down when they're saying, I don't know, on the bus. So then we start testing her reactions to things. Her reactions to negative people, which is probably the most amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, it rolls right off. She is not phased in the slightest. After we get used to that, we move right into, well, let's try another experiment. How about if she's in pain? And she has these kind of giggling reactions, even to extreme pain.
Yep.
It's as if we're checking things off a list that, come on, we have to find something to get this girl upset. Yeah. And nothing is working. And so I think if we're going to keep with this idea of experiments, the logical end of that is when you're faced with somebody who doesn't even speak English or a language.
Yeah.
They're speaking gibberish. She meets this homeless guy.
Right.
I assume he's homeless. I don't know. He's apparently sleeping in a bed
tonight. Bearded.
Right.
At the very least,
bearded. Maybe he's just bearded. Right. And so he is not even comprehensible, right? He's not, you have no idea what the fuck he's talking about. And this still, she does not miss a beat. She does not stumble for a second. She's right there having a conversation with a crazy person.
Yep.
Totally cool with it. It's amusing her. She's having a great time. She'll probably, she thinks about all of these things later as stories, which is one of the few ways I found in my life to deal with crappy situations, is to tell myself, this is so bad, it's going to make an amazing story later.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to get to tell this to somebody else, and it's going to be absurd how awful this was in the moment. And she's constantly telling people, these stories about things like her driving instructor.
But then she goes and justifies it.
What do you mean?
Well, she really good example. She picks on Scott for the racist thing.
Oh, sure.
She picks on Scott for the Enraha thing.
Yeah, right.
And then her and her friends start ripping him apart a little bit.
Yeah.
And then she kind of goes, but maybe he's just, he doesn't know any better. He's just a nice guy. He's a really good instructor.
She's assuming positive intent.
Yeah. She picks on him, but then immediately tries to repair any damage she may have done to their reputation.
Well, and ultimately, I think that's a great way to look at things.
Sure.
She's saying, all right, this guy is racist, which is clearly wrong, but he's also just a fucking human being. Yeah. And I don't think he came out of the womb, evil. Yeah. So there's got to be a reason he's racist, and I wonder what that is. And it sucks that he probably has a shitty life as a result of that. And toward the end of the movie, you start to get people attacking her for, not... she's constantly faced with this decision, you have to grow up, you have to get a mortgage, you have to be an adult.
Yeah. And you can't do what you're doing for your whole life.
Right. Other people just think not okay.
Yeah, well, there's this weird assumption, and I totally understand it. I've run into it myself because I'm a mid-20s musician.
Sure.
You've probably run into it too because you're in your mid-20s and you're an artist.
Right.
And people constantly will come up to you and ask, what are you doing? And I'm like, yeah, I'm in a band and I do a podcast, and they're like, is that a permanent thing?
Right. So that's a temporary thing?
Yeah. It goes back to Closer. Yeah. But yeah, it's just this thing where people kind of brush you off as eventually you'll grow up and have a career, and then we can have a conversation.
Right. When are you going to put on a suit?
Yeah.
I started putting on suits when I was 17 as a mockery of that very fucking thing. And I enjoy that a lot. I enjoy looking like a stupid kid. You have no idea how. Yeah. I feel like I have a moderately successful life, but I look like I probably live paycheck to paycheck and can't afford to eat. I wear stupid fucking mall pants, and I have not combed my hair in probably a decade. And I thoroughly enjoy giving someone the first impression of, this kid has no fucking clue what he's doing, and he's the least together person I know. And I feel fairly confident in being a responsible adult.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so maybe that's part of the reason I can kind of identify with how Poppy, almost aspire to be more like her. You know what I mean?
Totally.
It seems like she's just gotten to a place that I only wish I could achieve by 30. But one of the things that's thrown at her is you celebrate chaos, and I wonder, I feel like that's not entirely wrong. I feel like it's almost true that she celebrates chaos.
Yeah.
But is that bad?
Well,
First of all, is that true? And secondly, is that bad?
I don't know if it's 100% true. I think there are two different sides to the celebrating chaos coin. One, it's a matter of cause and effect.
Sure.
If you cause chaos for your own enjoyment, then you're celebrating chaos.
Okay.
That's option one.
Sure.
If option two, chaos causes your enjoyment,
right,
it's back to the same situation where she just rolls with it. She can handle bad situations just as well as she can handle good ones. And it's really not a matter of her being glad that there's chaos. It's more that she's just glad that there is anything.
So that gets to really the ultimate question that I think the movie's driving at.
Which is, was she flirting with Scott by playing with the gear shift?
That is kind of the ultimate question. There's these very vivid characters in here. And that's great when you're doing a character study, is to throw other crazies at your main protagonist crazy. And so we have the dance instructor, who's fucking amazing.
Eccentric.
And then Scott, who, of course, is also fucking amazing. And so, outside of the only honest moments where she seems distressed with that kid being bullied, I mean, that's a vivid situation more than a character.
Sure.
I don't want to say the kid is an amazing character,
Right.
but that's also a great place to put Poppy. We finally see what happens with her and Scott. And so by letting all of these things roll off her, she has kept herself in a situation that may be a little bit dangerous.
Uh-huh.
She ultimately comes to this confrontation because, I mean, when you're thinking about Scott, you're thinking this guy, first of all, he's a bit conspiratorial. He's probably not all there upstairs, right?
Sure.
He's a little bit loony. He seems to be an incredibly negative and hateful person. He's the ultimate villain because he's the antithesis of who Poppy is.
Right, exactly.
And the only reason that he, you know, when you see these characters collide, Poppy stays with him because nothing bothers Poppy.
Yeah.
He stays with Poppy only because he needs to prove something to himself.
Yeah, exactly.
And so there is a great character-based reason as to why he wouldn't just... Because really, you would think if
Magnets.
you saw the opposite of Poppy, that would probably be, I mean, completely repelled.
Sure.
There's no reason to keep those people together.
Yeah.
But you develop that character enough that they are...
it's a situation where Poppy is just... I guess she's kind of trying to fix Scott, or at least just get along with him.
Right.
And Scott is trying to fix himself through her.
So the question I'm driving at then, is there something wrong with this positive outlook? Is this going to get you in trouble? What is the possible danger of never realizing when something is evil or when something is wrong or cruel?
Well, I think that there was a really clear moment before she actually got into the physical altercation with Scott when she was back with that homeless guy under the bridge.
Sure.
If that were any other homeless guy, it was dark. She was off the road.
Right.
That could have gone very badly.
We feel fear for her.
Yeah.
She doesn't feel a whole lot of fear.
Right. It's just this situation where she is lucky that that homeless man was nice and not rapey.
Right. Nice and not rapey.
But it just, and I think that they tease you with that and go, this could have happened, but it didn't. But they give her not an equally bad situation, but still a bad situation to deal with.
What ends up for her being a worse situation?
Sure, well, that's true.
Scott's endangering them through driving,
Sure.
and he's endangering them through, well, I mean, he pulls her hair. You know, they get into a little bit of a conflict. It's nothing where he would smash her face in and, you know, murder her. But it's
nothing like a really powerful, magnanimous, God of Thunder like Jude Law slap.
God, we didn't even mention that, did we? So should people at least have some components of, you know, human devastation in their life? Does that keep a person balanced, or can someone effectively live without that?
I think the film points out that you don't need any misery
Sure.
to be able to survive.
It's actually making the extreme argument.
Yeah, she has a shitty situation. She resolves it the way a normal, clear person would. Like you said, it's not that she's disconnected from being in touch with other people.
Right.
She's not flighty and doltish.
Right.
She's completely able to cope with situations, to get in touch with people on an emotional level, which she does with Scott. It's really hard for her. She's on the verge of tears.
Sure.
And later that day, she's in a boat with her best friend talking to her boyfriend.
Right.
I mean, it doesn't faze her, though. That could ruin someone else's day.
Sure.
They might call their friends, say, I was just attacked.
Right.
Everything is
Could
terrible.
ruin their week.
Yeah. But for her, she resolves it then and there, puts an end to it, and it's in the past.
Yeah, this movie very easily could have said, the moral of the story is this is why you don't want to act like Poppy. It seems like a great ride at first, but look what could happen to you. Instead, it gives what's really the true answer.
Yeah.
Which is that this is just a different way for someone to behave in life. And these are the different effects that might create.
Yeah.
And they're going to have trouble like anybody else, but they have their own unique way of dealing with it. And at the end of the day, there's really nothing life-threatening or life-ending about this. It's not the end of the world if you always have a positive outlook and you don't grow up and you don't get a mortgage. That's not a fucking showstopper. That's just a different way to behave.
Another way that you should behave is to go to doublefeatureshow.com. We also have an email where you can send us wonderful strip clubs or other fantastic information. That's doublefeatureshow@gmail.com. But back to this website. I know you've been working really hard on it.
Yeah, there's something on there that's the great way this website is set up now. We can actually sort of look and see what people go to on the website.
Yeah.
Whereas before it was all built on top of Blogger and really awful. But there's a section at the top that people actually, it's the second most traveled to page on the site.
Weird.
And it is other projects.
Huh. So
People
basically
are
what you're saying is
legitimately-
people go to double feature and the second most likely thing that they're going to do is go somewhere else.
Well, yes, that's one way to look at it. The way I was going to look at it is the first question is list of films, A to Z. What have these guys covered? The second question is who the fuck are these
That's
people?
true.
And why would I want to listen to them ramble for 40 minutes at a time? And thankfully, the other projects are all, I mean, by very necessity, by definition, they have to be better than this project.
Yeah.
Because this is us talking about movies. Yep. I mean, it really can't get much worse than this. So you can find all sorts of stuff on there.
Uh-huh.
You can find a ton of your glitter mouse shit on there.
Yeah.
A ton of it. You can find that stupid video that I made.
That stupid, wonderful video.
It's kind of a wonderful
It's a
video.
really good video.
I like it. It's cute. I shot a video of your band. You can find that on there. You can find some other stuff that I did. There's
your
a lot
photos,
of
right? Your Zombie March photos?
Photos are on there. There's some photography stuff. There is a bunch of websites I made when I did a lot more programming. There's all sorts of goddamn stuff on there. You could keep yourself entertained for minutes, really.
Yeah.
Minutes of your time.
As long as it takes you to realize that there's another link called Bagcat, but that's for another day.
So we're going to do a couple more movies next time on the show.
Yeah.
And we're doing something different with the movies. We're going to move away from human beings.
Yeah.
Back into, let's say, some familiar territory.
Yeah. Well, seemingly. We've done roadsploitation before.
Sure.
To the point where our
Before
fans,
you turn off your
thank you.
MP3 player, this is a little bit different.
To the point where Podmanity is banging their Zunes on their cave walls.
They threw them out back at mile marker 35.
But we're going to do something different. We're going to do a James Taylor film.
Okay,
James Taylor,
sure.
the famous 70s songwriter, and a film about a tire.
That is really. I mean, I think that's the official synopsis, a film about a tire.
Yeah, it's.
I'm feeling a little bit of that Black Christmas Behind the Mask show.
Yeah.
You know, that sort of beginning and end of what there was the slasher genre.
Yeah.
And of course, it's not all inclusive beginning.
Yeah.
It's not the real beginning, and it's certainly not the real end.
Yeah.
But you take a concept, you give it a strong sort of origin,
And then you take it to its logical conclusion.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so Two-Lane Blacktop is the first film. And it's certainly not the first roadsploitation film.
But it's among the first, and probably among the...
It's a great example.
Yeah, it is. And
least.
it's got the cult standing that we've managed to dodge with a lot of these roadsploitation films.
Sure, and for a film of its heyday, it's incredibly effective.
Yeah.
At bringing philosophy onto the road.
Right. And then the other one that's really effective at bringing a tire onto the road is it's a newer film called Rubber.
I mean, it is literally a film about a tire.
Watch more fucking film.
Bye.
Well, boys, looks like you started the fun without me.
You're all sick. Every last one of you.
We're going to need a bigger gun.
What's the matter? You scared of things that go boom, boom?
Give me one goddamn reason why I shouldn't blow your goddamn brains all over that goddamn wall.
My name is Eric. I'm here with Michael on Double Feature. And we have two films today about, I don't know, human beings.
Yeah.
That's the most I got for you. I'm going to go with human beings.
Okay. We can go with human beings. We can go with England.
We could go a little English here. I think we're going to learn about people today.
Okay.
I want to say it's both sides of the spectrum. I want to say we're just...
And by spectrum, you mean whether they're happy or sad. That's the spectrum that you're speaking on. Human beings have a lot of spectrums.
Fear and love are the... Sorry. I'm thinking Melinda and Melinda. Right?
Sure.
I'm thinking comedy and tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
Probably,
feature of Double Feature.
It's probably the best feature of our show.
I would say that the best feature of our show is probably Behind the Mask.
That would be the best film featured on the show.
Sorry, I get...
Also, possibly not true.
It's almost like... It's very likely
still
not true.
listening?
David Stevie not listening.
Not true. Not true at all. Anyways, what was I saying? Chapters. Use the chapters to skip over, or the time codes, or you've got the hang of this thing by now. This is somebody's first episode of Double Feature.
If you don't know what to do with chapters, listen to next week's episode or the previous week's episode, because I'm sure we really nailed it one of those two times.
Ask a friend. Now we're going to start with Closer, and I don't have a lot written
That's great.
on the iPad about Closer.
Okay.
I just assumed you would run with this as far as humanly possible.
I will, and I'm going to need you to stop me when we get to Happy Go Lucky Train.
Sure. The only thing I need to say about Closer is when I saw it, it had a really great trailer that had, is it Suzanne Vega? I think it's Susan Vega, right? The song Caramel.
Yeah.
Which is great. It's a wonderful, loungy, it's an amazing song, and I've had it since then, and I still listen to it almost daily for some reason. It's an incredible song. That ends what I've prepared for the show today.
Well, then I guess I'm gonna have to take the reins.
Step up.
Okay, so Closer is. I saw it in the theater when it came out in 2004, and at the time, it totally blew my mind. I had never seen anything like it. To be honest, I've still not seen much like it.
Sure.
Probably because I don't usually watch films that are like Closer.
Well, you and I were wondering quite a bit about this.
Right.
If it is really the only thing of its kind.
Yeah.
Or if perhaps every Julia Roberts movie is like this,
right.
And we just have no idea.
Exactly. But the thing that you brought up while we were watching it, and that I'm really glad you brought up, because I'm glad that it was at least semi-obvious, is you mentioned the shape of things.
Ah, right.
Something we did back in, I believe, year 1.
Yeah.
Rachel Weisz, Paul Rudd.
Sure. It was right around Tank Girl somewhere.
Right. And the big thing that we talked about with that film was that it was based on a play, and a lot of the actors were in the original production.
Sure.
And so it translated a little bit weird to screen. So the thing about Closer is it too is based on a play, and the two male actors, Jude Law and Clive Owen, who play Dan and Larry respectively, were both in, I believe, the original stage production of Closer. The difference here is I can't see how you would make Closer an effective play.
Sure.
Within the film, they do a lot of time jumping and switching scenes, and it's always just conversations between people.
Right.
And the thing about switching scenes as quickly as they do in the film, I can't see it being easy to do that in a stage production sense without disconnecting people for any period of time between these conversations.
Yeah, this is one of those things that sometimes when you watch a movie a million times, you get a better sense of a lot of things about the movie. You learn more about it, you pick up on more. This is one of those oddities, having, you could consider one of these a comedy and the other a tragedy.
Right.
I suppose that works.
Yeah.
What are the two movies on the show?
We're going to do Closer and Happy Go Lucky.
So we'll start out with the downer.
Yeah.
And then we'll talk about Happy Go Lucky, which is quite obviously from the title, the brighter, the happier
not
of the
downer.
two, right, of the two films. Now, my plan here today is to actually spoil the contents of both of these films right on our show.
That's impressive. I'm really excited for that.
So if you saw Closer once in 2004 and forgot what happened, you should probably skip over that to Happy Go Lucky, which is a film that I'm assuming next to no one has seen.
Yeah, I had never heard of it.
But also awesome.
Yeah,
so if you haven't seen either of these films, there's going to be some spoilers. There's going to be some character stuff. You should just skip over, come back to it later. Download the show, stick it on your computer. When you watch the movie 4 years from now, you'll have a nice little surprise sitting in your downloads folder.
Wow.
You can use the chapters that are a part of the show, a feature of our show.